Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 109 of The Captain's Heart. What do I want to do to that man? Jeremy chuckled at the question. Leo hadn't asked about him as often as he'd expected since he told her about Omar Sawan, but as now as she had now. But as she had now, when she did, it took him by surprise. I want to wring his neck, throwing him in that cursed machine and let him see just how good it feels to be healed. He took a breath. I guess that doesn't reflect all that good, does it? The male orchestra to your torture. Wanting him to feel what you went through isn't unreasonable. The real question is how far you intend to go to make that happen. He nodded. At the height of his anger, when she'd finally gotten him to voice it, he'd torn the Federation apart in describing what he'd do to get his revenge. Now, I don't want to do anything. I'm not willing to sacrifice what I have, what I'm regaining, just for that satisfaction, just for the satisfaction of seeing the terror on his face. It was a large part of what she'd made him realize, that his fantasy of revenge didn't come with the happy ending movies gave them. Even Kelsirian's ballad tended to smooth over their ending when they weren't recounting historical events. If he doesn't bother me, we'll both live our life to the best of our abilities. And if he does bother you, he flexed his hand and the claws extended at the glove's fingertips. I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to protect what's mine, tooth and claw. I'm not ever letting him take my life, take my will away from me again. He locked eyes with her. If it comes to that, I will kill him. She nodded without visible judgment. How are you progressing with overcoming what was done to you? This shift didn't catch him as much by surprise. Getting him emotional, then addressing a sore point was a tactic she returned to. He sighed. We're talking. He actively avoided thinking of who he was talking with. But it's always there, at the edge, listening for anything that indicates who I'm talking with. It's fucking frustrating and exhausting to always have to be wary, to be aware of my thoughts then. Our conversation should be, I don't know, normal. There should be mindless back and forth. Instead, I have to tiptoe around everything. As much as before. No, either I've gotten better at keeping my thoughts from it, or it's not as effective, but but I have the time to catch slip-ups now. Small ones, anyway. A bit of both, she said. You are certainly better at keeping some thoughts to yourself when it comes to me. Sorry, I'm not trying to hide anything. Well, he added a smile. Not this time. She nodded. Do you want to continue with these sessions? It took him a second to work out what she'd ask. I didn't think I got a say in how long I had them. Aren't you the one supposed to determine that? Until I felt you were able to make such a decision. My role is to help you through the process of untangling what was done to you and so you can resolve it. So my question is, do you think you need my help in such a structured way still? He almost said yes. He was used to these meetings. There was a comfort in having her evaluate his conclusions, confirm he was on the right track. But it was all that it was, wasn't it? Comfort in the familiar. When was the last time she'd actively guided his decision making when it came to dealing with the programming? Over a month? More? These last sessions were nothing more than her asking what he'd done, what he planned on doing, anything any time. Any time he'd had a problem, he'd had to deal with it on his own, or I'll still be able to call you if I need help, right? Of course. As your counselor. And your friend. I will always be here if you need me. He nodded. Then I think I'm good with officially continuing this on my own. Very well. She typed something. Technician Jeremy Bradshaw, you are now released from mandatory sessions with your counselor. May the wind always favor your hunt. Thank you. He stood for everything, Leah. I don't know how I'd... He trailed off. You are welcome, Jeremy. Beyond my duty to anyone on the crew, I'm glad I was there when you needed help, that you trusted me with your problems and your friendship. When her expression turned expectant, he realized he was still looking for a way to convey his gratitude after she'd already accepted it. Have a good shift, he said, then exited her office. Rate 'em and weep. Bob laid a royal flush on the table, grinning. Thurk looked at Jeremy, air tilted questioningly. Don't look at me to translate. I'm starting to think he's got an entirely different version of English in his head than mine. Then why would we weep? Scariff asked. Scar, my boy! Jeremy choked on his coffee. Are you okay? He nodded. You get what you're implying with that short of a name, right? That me and Scar are really, he raised an eyebrow, really good friends? Good friends who fuck, Scariff said, and Jeremy was glad his coffee was on the table. We aren't quite that upfront with that stuff, Scar, Bob said. Okay, so how did you two get so friendly? We met using your weight machine. Since you told me about the one in the alley, I figured I'd use that instead of always bothering you. I showed up once with Scar still using it. We got to talking, to working out together, to sharing a shower and getting to know each other. He smiled really well. Didn't they do the same thing? Didn't they do the same thing to you they did to Jeremy? Prateros asked. He doesn't seem to have the ease you do at accepting to have sex with friends. I have someone, Jeremy stated, while keeping any thought of who out of his mind. They broke my mind every which way to Sunday, Bob replied. My counselor says that having to live with that for a decade plus made my mind more adaptable. There are things I like, things I don't, but I don't seem to do disgust or any kind of extreme reaction. I can still contemplate violence. Pretty sure I can be violent, but I don't know if I could be driven to violence, if you know what I mean. The people around the poker table nodded. Anyway, you weep because I get all your money. A tap on the table and the amount of the pot transferred to Bob. Jimmy wasn't sure how he felt about how Bob had gotten enough money to gamble like this with it. His friend had told him about the transaction between him and Xenial, but he hadn't known what had been included in the exchange. Based on the amount, it couldn't be limited to the collection of old movie Bob had reconstructed from the signal of old Earth. Xenial's morals were also sufficiently loose that he'd have no problem dealing with dangerous information. Bob had had a military ship to himself for nearly 20 years. Even without skills, he was bound to have come across data the Earth military didn't want floating around. Well, I hope you don't mind, Bob said, but I think I'm going to head off and... We do, Jeremy said, then smiled. I think we deserve a chance to get some of that money you took from us. Get back. Some of that money you took from us. Bob looked at them. The stats aren't in your favor of that happening. Zanila Aran is a fickle lover, Tarok said. Take for granted he'll be in your bed and you'll find yourself lonely. Bob sat down. If you think luck's why I keep winning, then you deserve the coming trouncing. What's the ETA for the station? He asked his friend. It's on the system. You know that, right? Jimmy stretched in the bed, which lifted him off the bold bottom. Yeah, but I wouldn't have a reason to talk to you then. He relaxed. His friend chuckled. You don't need a reason. You don't need reasons to call me other than you want to. Oh, I want to. How was your day? Another chuckled. Uneventful. Spent most of it going over files and in meetings with the head of the ship's departments. Plural. And we will be at Ashgaran station in a little over 2 months. How was your day? Boring. Alex been an ass again for some reason and had me crawling through conduits fixing this, fixing that. He's fucky. He's fucking lucky I didn't tell him what I thought of getting me to do the work we have repair for. Another chuckle. What? Nothing? Oh, bullshit. What do you know that's got you chuckling at my misfortune? All I will say is that I have never known Alex to do anything without considering why he's doing it. To piss me off. The engineer doesn't gain anything from making his technicians angry with him, and he doesn't get a thrill out of using the power his rank grants him. Jerry sighed. I know. It's just frustrating. It's just frustrating to be sent to do that kind of work without being told why. A technician doesn't question the engineer, he said preemptively. He trusts that he knows what he's doing. Do you? Yes, he said reluctantly. That's one thing that was obvious early on. He doesn't do frivolous orders. I just wish I knew why. That's all. I'm sure when he feels the time is right, he will explain his reasoning. I guess you're right. Anyway, I should go to sleep. He felt the programming. He felt the programming prickle. I'm glad. You know what? I'm going to remove that. I'm glad I called you. I'm glad you did. Sleep well, Jeremy. What are you looking forward to doing once we're at Ascaron? He asked Bob. When the reply didn't come, he opened his eye to look at the only other human on the sand. Bob was looking around in appreciation. Jeremy hadn't missed the erection, but ignored it. It's like every time we come here for a swim, you act like you've never seen a naked Kelsirian. Been alone with nothing more but my hand and a limited selection of porn for too many years. I'm going to drink in the sights of so many amazing bodies any chance I get. A xenophile, he accused without vehemence. Bob snorted. I'm not the one who won't sleep with his own kind. I have someone. Yeah, but I don't think you'd. Jeremy was surprised at the lack of reaction from the programming. He hadn't meant to say it. He'd actively avoided thinking of the relationship he was in since it used to trigger a link to who he was in it with, and that was asking for an attack. But it hadn't even a prickle. He still didn't think of who he was in a relation with. The beach wasn't a place for a freak-out attack. And you're back with us? Bob asked. Yeah, sorry, just made a realization. That if you were single, you'd take me to bed? I don't know. Because of how they made sure I'd never look at men that way, I don't have a frame of reference for how I might feel about them sexually. I know I've drawn naked guys in my teens, kind of how I ended up with at the doctor and got my head screwed up with the first time, but I don't remember how I felt about that. Well, just remember that I'm only here for a limited amount of time. After that, you'll have missed your chance. And just to prove I was paying attention, once we reach Asgaron, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm taking things one day at a time. He stood. And now I'm going back in the water. I have no idea how you can stand this heat. Jeremy watched Bob vanish into the water, thinking over what he'd said. He didn't remember how he felt about the drawings. That's plural. But once he was back in his quarter, he could test if human men did anything to him. They'd been so set on targeting one person, the programming didn't trigger if he thought of men in general, even naked ones. He simply hadn't felt a need to do so before. And now it wasn't so much need and more curiosity. I'm sorry, his friend said. You did what? You object? No, of course not. I'm just surprised. You never mentioned an interest in them. I didn't know I had one. And now that you know, doesn't change the fact that I'm with someone. True. So yeah, turns out human men turn me on too. That's good to know. Jimmy chuckled. How was your day? Much like the previous ones. The problem with being as organized as I am is that everything is in good order well before we reach our destination. So I don't have that last minute working on everything, captains. Everything that captains of other ships seem to enjoy so much. I don't think they're being honest. His friend chuckled. Possibly not. Some of us do seem to feel a need to only show themselves with shining fur. That probably takes more work than it's worth. So I expect. Sleep well, Jeremy. I need to get to bed myself. I have meetings early tomorrow. Sleep well. Sleep well, too. Technician Jeremy Bradshaw, the engineer, called from the door to his office. I need to see you. Someone's in trouble. Technician Shabitan Corial Simirian Singsang. Or is in for a good time. Technician Asherik Taborek said, I hear the engineer's fun. Jeremy didn't respond to the playful jabs, too worried about why the engineer needed him to come to his office. He usually had no problem explaining someone's mistake at their station. Since keeping him waiting wouldn't improve the situation, he headed there. There was a second chair before the secondary console. Sit, the engineer instructed. Then brought up information. Go through the data. Pull the work result. Give me your evaluation of them. He swallowed his question. He trusted the engineer knew what he was doing. Quickly, he realized the data was about relays Jeremy was now too familiar with due to the multiple days of crawling through the conduits, scanning and replacing and repairing those that needed it. Those weren't the conduits. Those weren't the relays. Oh, well. Yeah, the relays he'd worked on. So the engineer wasn't asking him to evaluate his own work. He wasn't that cruel. Then he quickly noticed a pattern in the work being done. He smiled. You son of a bitch. He would never have noticed the discrepancy if not for the hours spent doing the work himself. And that concludes chapter 109 of The Captain's Heart. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is available on Ream Story. And if you are looking to listen to these live, I don't know where my mind went there, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. Links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.